In the annals of Hong Kong's criminal history, few cases have shocked the public consciousness as profoundly as the Hello Kitty murder of 1999. This horrific crime, which involved the torture, murder, and dismemberment of a young woman whose remains were stuffed inside a Hello Kitty mermaid doll, became a defining moment in Hong Kong's understanding of extreme violence and criminal depravity. The case not only horrified the local population but also gained international notoriety as one of the most disturbing murders ever documented. The victim, Fan Man-yi, was a 23-year-old nightclub hostess who became trapped in a nightmare of torture and abuse that lasted for over a month before culminating in her brutal death. Her killers, Chan Man-lok, Leung Shing-cho, and Leung Wai-luan, were aided by a 14-year-old girl whose testimony would eventually lead to the discovery of the crime and the prosecution of those responsible. The Hello Kitty murder case transcended typical criminal proceedings to become a cultural phenomenon that reflected deeper issues within Hong Kong's society, including the treatment of women in the sex industry, the prevalence of loan sharking and organized crime, and the vulnerability of marginalized individuals. The case's impact extended far beyond the courtroom, influencing popular culture, legal procedures, and public discourse about violence and justice in one of Asia's most cosmopolitan cities. This comprehensive examination explores the background of the victim and perpetrators, the horrific month-long torture that preceded the murder, the investigation that uncovered the truth, the complex legal proceedings that followed, and the lasting impact of this case on Hong Kong society and international criminal justice understanding. To understand the Hello Kitty murder case, it is essential to examine the social and economic context of Hong Kong in the late 1990s. This was a period of significant transition for the territory, as it had recently been handed back to China in 1997 after more than 150 years of British colonial rule. The change in sovereignty created uncertainty and social tension that affected all levels of Hong Kong society. The economic crisis that swept through Asia in 1997 to 1998 had a particularly severe impact on Hong Kong, creating widespread unemployment and financial hardship. The territory's economy, which had been built on finance, trade, and real estate, contracted sharply as regional markets collapsed and investor confidence plummeted. This economic distress created conditions that made some individuals more vulnerable to exploitation and criminal activity. Hong Kong's nightlife and entertainment industry was a significant part of the local economy, employing thousands of people in bars, clubs, restaurants, and other establishments that catered to both locals and tourists. This industry operated in a complex legal and social environment where legitimate businesses often existed alongside illegal activities including prostitution, gambling, and loan sharking. The territory's unique legal system, which combined elements of British common law with local ordinances and practices, created jurisdictional complexities that sometimes made law enforcement challenging. The police force, known as the Royal Hong Kong Police Force until the handover and then the Hong Kong Police Force, was generally effective but faced ongoing challenges in dealing with organized crime and the entertainment industry's connections to illegal activities. Women working in Hong Kong's entertainment industry during this period often faced significant risks and vulnerabilities. Many were from mainland China or other parts of Asia and had limited legal status or protection. They were often dependent on employers or criminal organizations for their livelihood and housing, making them vulnerable to exploitation and abuse. The social attitudes toward women in the entertainment industry were complex and often contradictory. While such work was tolerated and even accepted as part of Hong Kong's cosmopolitan culture, women who worked in these industries were often marginalized and stigmatized, making them less likely to receive protection from law enforcement or sympathy from the broader community. Fan Man-yi was born in 1975 in Hong Kong to a working-class family that struggled with financial difficulties and social challenges. Her early life was marked by the kind of economic hardship that affected many families in Hong Kong during the economic uncertainties of the 1980s and early 1990s. Like many young women from disadvantaged backgrounds, Fan Man-yi was drawn to work in Hong Kong's entertainment industry as a way of earning money and achieving some measure of independence. She found employment as a hostess in various nightclubs and karaoke bars, work that provided better income than most alternatives available to women with limited education and skills. Fan Man-yi's work as a nightclub hostess placed her in a complex and often dangerous social environment. Hostesses were expected to entertain male customers through conversation, drinking, and sometimes more intimate services. The work required them to be charming and accommodating while navigating the often aggressive behavior of intoxicated customers and the complex power dynamics of the entertainment industry. Despite the challenges and risks of her work, Fan Man-yi was described by those who knew her as a generally cheerful and optimistic person who maintained hopes for a better future. She dreamed of saving enough money to eventually leave the entertainment industry and establish a more stable and respectable life for herself. Her involvement with loan sharks and the criminal underworld that would ultimately lead to her death began as a relatively minor financial problem. Like many people in the entertainment industry, she occasionally borrowed money to cover expenses or invest in her appearance and wardrobe. However, the high interest rates and aggressive collection methods employed by loan sharks meant that small debts could quickly spiral out of control. Fan Man-yi's relationship with the men who would eventually kill her began in early 1999 when she borrowed money from Chan Man-lak, who operated an illegal lending business that targeted women in the entertainment industry. What began as a simple financial transaction would evolve into a nightmare of abuse and torture that lasted for more than a month. The three men responsible for Fan Man-yi's torture and murder represented different aspects of Hong Kong's criminal underworld and demonstrated how ordinary individuals could become capable of extraordinary evil under certain circumstances. Understanding their backgrounds and motivations provides crucial insights into how such horrific crimes can develop and escalate. Chan Man-lak, the leader of the group, was a 34-year-old man with a history of involvement in illegal gambling and loan sharking. He was described by those who knew him as intelligent but ruthless, with a particular talent for identifying and exploiting vulnerable individuals. His criminal activities were motivated primarily by financial gain, but the Hello Kitty murder would reveal sadistic tendencies that went far beyond simple greed. Chan's background included previous convictions for minor criminal offenses, but nothing in his history suggested the capacity for the extreme violence he would display in the Fan Man-yi case. His evolution from petty criminal to sadistic torturer illustrated how criminal behavior can escalate when circumstances and opportunity combine with underlying personality disorders. Leung Shing-cho, age 27, was Chan's close associate and accomplice in various criminal enterprises. He was described as less intelligent than Chan but more prone to violence and impulsive behavior. His role in the group dynamics was often that of the enforcer, carrying out the physical violence that Chan orchestrated and planned. Leung Wailuan, the youngest of the three at age 21, was relatively new to serious criminal activity but was eager to prove himself to his older associates. His youth and inexperience made him particularly susceptible to the group dynamics that encouraged escalating violence and cruelty. His participation in the torture demonstrated how peer pressure and criminal socialization could overcome normal moral inhibitions. The group dynamics among the three men created a toxic environment where violence was normalized and escalated through competition and mutual reinforcement. Each member sought to prove his loyalty and toughness to the others, leading to increasingly extreme acts of cruelty and violence. The psychological profiles of the perpetrators revealed various personality disorders and antisocial traits that contributed to their capacity for extreme violence. However, none of them had histories that clearly predicted the level of sadistic cruelty they would display in the Hello Kitty murder case. The torture of Fan Man-yi began in March 1999 when she was unable to repay money she had borrowed from Chan Man-lak's loan sharking operation. What started as a debt collection effort quickly escalated into one of the most prolonged and sadistic torture cases ever documented in Hong Kong's criminal history. Fan Manyi was initially taken to a flat in Tsim Sha Tsui where she was held captive and subjected to increasingly severe physical and psychological abuse. The perpetrators claimed that they were simply trying to collect the debt she owed, but their actions quickly went far beyond any reasonable debt collection efforts and descended into pure sadistic cruelty. The torture methods employed were both brutal and psychologically devastating. Fan Manyi was beaten with various objects, burned with cigarettes and hot objects, and subjected to sexual abuse and humiliation. The perpetrators seemed to take pleasure in her suffering and competed with each other to devise new methods of causing pain and degradation. The psychological torture was as severe as the physical abuse. Fan Manyi was repeatedly told that she would be killed if she tried to escape or seek help, and she was forced to witness the perpetrators planning additional tortures and discussing her eventual death. This psychological manipulation was designed to break her spirit and ensure her complete compliance with their demands. The duration of the torture, over a month, was particularly significant because it demonstrated the premeditated and sustained nature of the abuse. This was not a crime of passion or a situation that got out of control quickly, it was a deliberate and systematic campaign of cruelty that continued for weeks. The presence of the 14-year-old girl during much of the torture added another disturbing dimension to the case. The teenager, who was Chan Man-lok's girlfriend, was forced to witness and sometimes participate in the abuse. Her eventual testimony would be crucial to the prosecution's case, but her involvement also raised difficult questions about victimization and complicity. As the torture continued, Fan Manyi's physical condition deteriorated rapidly. She was denied adequate food, water, and medical care, and the cumulative effects of the beatings and abuse left her weak and barely able to function. Her captors seemed to enjoy her increasing helplessness and used it as an opportunity for further humiliation and abuse. The murder of Fan Manyi occurred in April 1999 after more than a month of continuous torture and abuse. The exact circumstances of her death were disputed during the trial, but the evidence suggested that she died as a result of the cumulative effects of the prolonged torture rather than any single fatal injury. The perpetrators' decision to kill Fan Manyi appeared to be motivated by their realization that she could identify them and testify about the torture if she were ever released. Rather than simply letting her go or continuing the abuse indefinitely, they decided that murder was the only way to eliminate the witness to their crimes. The method of disposal chosen by the perpetrators was particularly disturbing and would give the case its infamous name. After killing Fan Manyi, they dismembered her body using kitchen knives and other household tools. The dismemberment was carried out in the same apartment where the torture had occurred, creating a crime scene of unimaginable horror. The perpetrators then stuffed Fan Manyi's severed head into a Hello Kitty mermaid doll that had been purchased from a local toy store. The choice of this particular container was apparently practical rather than symbolic. The doll was large enough to contain the head and was unlikely to arouse suspicion if discovered by neighbors or authorities. The rest of Fan Manyi's remains were disposed of through various methods, including flushing smaller body parts down toilets and discarding larger pieces in different locations around Hong Kong. This dispersal of the remains was designed to make identification and investigation more difficult if any parts were discovered. The Hello Kitty doll containing Fan Manyi's head was initially kept in the apartment as a grotesque trophy, demonstrating the perpetrators' complete lack of remorse or human empathy. The casual way in which they treated the remains of their victim revealed the depths of their moral depravity and psychological dysfunction. One of the most complex and tragic aspects of the Hello Kitty murder case was the involvement of a 14-year-old girl who was both witness to and participant in the crimes. Her role in the case raised difficult questions about victimization, complicity, and the criminal justice system's treatment of minors involved in serious crimes. The teenager, whose identity was protected due to her age, was Chan Man-lok's girlfriend and was present during much of the torture and abuse of Fan Man-yi. Her young age and relationship with the primary perpetrator created a complex dynamic where she was simultaneously victim and accomplice in the horrific crimes. The girl's presence during the torture served multiple purposes for the perpetrators. She was sometimes forced to participate in the abuse, serving as additional torment for Fan Man-yi and as a way of implicating her in the crimes. Her youth and apparent innocence also provided cover for the perpetrator's activities, as neighbors were less likely to suspect criminal activity in an apartment where a young girl was living. The psychological impact on the teenager of witnessing and participating in such extreme violence was severe and long-lasting. Mental health experts who later examined her noted signs of trauma and psychological damage that would require years of treatment and support to address. The girl's eventual decision to report the crimes to police was motivated by her growing fear of the perpetrators and her realization that she might become their next victim. The psychological pressure of keeping such horrific secrets, combined with her fear for her own safety, ultimately overcame her loyalty to Chan and her fear of the consequences of reporting the crimes. Her testimony was crucial to the prosecution's case, as she was the only surviving witness to many of the crimes and could provide detailed accounts of the torture and murder. However, her young age and involvement in the crimes also made her testimony vulnerable to challenges from defense attorneys who questioned her reliability and motivations. The Hello Kitty murder case came to light in May 1999 when the 14-year-old witness finally approached police and reported the horrific crimes she had witnessed. Her initial report was so shocking and disturbing that investigators initially had difficulty believing that such extreme cruelty was possible. The teenager's account of the torture and murder was detailed and consistent, providing investigators with specific information about the crimes, the perpetrators, and the location where the murder had occurred. However, the extreme nature of her claims required careful verification before police could take action against the suspected perpetrators. The investigation began with a search of the apartment where the crimes had allegedly occurred. What investigators found there exceeded even their worst expectations based on the teenager's testimony. The apartment contained extensive evidence of prolonged violence and torture, including bloodstains, makeshift torture devices, and a Hello Kitty doll containing Fan Man-yi's severed head. The discovery of the Hello Kitty doll and its horrific contents became the defining image of the case and provided the crime with its infamous name. The juxtaposition of the innocent, childlike imagery of Hello Kitty with the gruesome reality of what was hidden inside the doll created a particularly disturbing and memorable symbol of the case. Forensic analysis of the crime scene revealed evidence of prolonged and systematic torture that corroborated the teenager's testimony in remarkable detail. Blood spatter patterns, DNA evidence, and other physical evidence painted a picture of sustained violence and cruelty that had continued for weeks. The investigation expanded to include searches for the remaining body parts and evidence of the perpetrator's other criminal activities. The systematic disposal of Fan Man-yi's remains across multiple locations created an enormous forensic challenge that required coordinated efforts by multiple police units and forensic specialists. Investigators also had to piece together Fan Man-yi's background and the circumstances that had led to her becoming a victim of the loan sharks. This investigation revealed the complex world of illegal lending, entertainment industry exploitation, and organized crime that formed the backdrop to the murder. The arrests of Chan Man-lok, Leung Shingcho, and Leung Wailuan occurred rapidly once police had confirmed the teenager's testimony and discovered the evidence at the crime scene. However, the interrogation of the suspects revealed the complex psychological dynamics that had enabled such extreme cruelty and the different roles that each perpetrator had played in the crimes. Chan Man-lok, as the leader of the group, initially attempted to deny involvement in the murder while acknowledging that Fan Man-yi had died in his apartment. His interrogation revealed a sophisticated criminal mind that understood the legal system and was attempting to minimize his culpability while shifting blame to his associates. Chan's explanation of events portrayed the torture and murder as having gotten out of control rather than being premeditated acts of sadistic cruelty. He claimed that the initial intent had been simply to collect the debt that Fan Man-yi owed and that the violence had escalated beyond what anyone had intended. However, the evidence of planning and premeditation was overwhelming, including the purchase of torture implements, the setup of the apartment for prolonged captivity, and the systematic nature of the abuse that had been inflicted over more than a month. Chan's attempts to portray the crimes as unplanned were contradicted by the extensive evidence of deliberate and methodical cruelty. Liang Xingqiu's interrogation revealed a different psychological profile, with signs of genuine mental illness and a history of violence that suggested deeper psychological problems. His participation in the torture appeared to be motivated by a combination of loyalty to Chan and his own sadistic impulses that had been unleashed by the group dynamic. Liang Weiluan, the youngest of the three, presented as someone who had been influenced by his older associates but who had also enthusiastically participated in the torture and murder. His youth and apparent remorse during interrogation created some sympathy, but the evidence of his active participation in the cruelest aspects of the torture undermined claims that he had been merely a reluctant follower. The trial of the Hello Kitty murder defendants began in 2000 and became one of the most closely watched criminal proceedings in Hong Kong's history. The case attracted massive media attention and public interest, with courtroom sessions being packed with observers and extensive coverage in local and international media. The prosecution, led by senior government prosecutors, faced the challenge of presenting evidence of extreme cruelty and violence while maintaining the dignity of the proceedings and protecting the various witnesses, particularly the teenage witness whose testimony was crucial to their case. The evidence presented during the trial was so disturbing that special precautions had to be taken to protect jurors, court personnel, and observers from psychological trauma. Graphic crime scene photographs, forensic evidence, and detailed testimony about the torture methods created an atmosphere of horror that affected everyone involved in the proceedings. The teenage witness's testimony was the centerpiece of the prosecution's case. Her detailed account of the month-long torture and the eventual murder provided the jury with a first-hand perspective on the crimes that no other evidence could match. However, her youth, her relationship with the primary defendant, and her own involvement in some aspects of the crimes made her testimony vulnerable to attack by defense attorneys. The defense strategies varied among the three defendants, reflecting their different roles in the crimes and their different legal situations. Chan Man-lok's defense focused on challenging the reliability of the teenage witness and arguing that the prosecution had not proven premeditation or his direct involvement in the killing. Liang Xingqiu's defense emphasized his mental health issues and argued that he was not fully responsible for his actions due to psychological problems and substance abuse. This strategy sought to obtain a reduced sentence based on diminished capacity rather than complete acquittal. Liang Weiluan's defense stressed his youth and his subordinate role in the group, arguing that he had been influenced by older, more experienced criminals and had not been the driving force behind the torture and murder. In September 2000, after a trial that had lasted several months and featured some of the most disturbing evidence ever presented in a Hong Kong courtroom, the jury returned guilty verdicts against all three defendants. The convictions were met with relief by the victim's family and satisfaction by the general public, who had followed the case with a mixture of horror and fascination. Chan Man-lok was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment, reflecting the court's conclusion that he had been the primary organizer and leader of the criminal enterprise. His sentence ensured that he would spend the rest of his life in prison, with no possibility of parole for at least 20 years. Liang Xingqiu was also convicted of murder and received a life sentence, though the court acknowledged his mental health issues as a mitigating factor in determining the minimum period he would serve before becoming eligible for parole consideration. Liang Weiluan, despite his youth and claims of being influenced by his older associates, was convicted of murder and sentenced to life imprisonment. The court concluded that his active participation in the torture and his apparent enjoyment of the victim's suffering warranted the same severe punishment as his older accomplices. The sentences reflected Hong Kong's determination to impose severe punishment for extreme crimes and to send a clear message that such violence would not be tolerated. The life sentences ensured that the perpetrators would be removed from society for the foreseeable future and would not have the opportunity to commit similar crimes. The 14-year-old witness was not charged with any crimes related to the murder, though she was required to undergo psychological counseling and was placed under the supervision of social services. The decision not to prosecute her reflected the court's recognition of her status as both victim and witness rather than a willing participant in the crimes. The Hello Kitty murder case generated an unprecedented level of public interest and media coverage in Hong Kong, with the story dominating headlines for months and becoming a cultural touchstone for discussions about violence, justice, and social values. The extreme nature of the crimes and the disturbing details that emerged during the trial created a public fascination that bordered on obsession. Local media coverage of the case was extensive and often sensationalized, with newspapers and television stations competing to provide the most detailed coverage of the trial proceedings and the horrific evidence being presented. The graphic nature of the crimes created editorial challenges about how much detail to include while still informing the public about the case. The public reaction to the case was one of shock, horror, and disbelief that such extreme cruelty could occur in their city. Many Hong Kong residents struggled to understand how ordinary people could become capable of such sadistic behavior and what this said about their society and its values. The case also generated significant discussion about the treatment of women in Hong Kong's entertainment industry and the vulnerability of marginalized individuals to exploitation and violence. Women's rights advocates used the case to highlight broader issues of gender-based violence and the need for better protection for vulnerable women. International media coverage of the case was also extensive, with news organizations around the world reporting on the horrific details and the cultural implications of the crime. The Hello Kitty murder became one of Hong Kong's most internationally notorious criminal cases, affecting the territory's reputation and image abroad. The cultural impact of the case extended beyond news coverage to influence popular culture, including films, books, and other media treatments that explored the psychological and social aspects of the crimes. However, many of these cultural representations were criticized for sensationalizing the violence and exploiting the tragedy for entertainment purposes. The Hello Kitty murder case presented significant forensic challenges that pushed the boundaries of investigative techniques and evidence analysis available in Hong Kong at the time. The extreme nature of the crime scene and the deliberate disposal of evidence created complex problems that required innovative solutions and international expertise. The forensic examination of the apartment where the torture and murder had occurred was one of the most extensive crime scene investigations in Hong Kong's history. Every surface was tested for biological evidence, and sophisticated techniques were used to analyze blood spatter patterns and other physical evidence of the prolonged violence. The recovery and analysis of Fan Man-Yi's remains presented particular challenges due to the dismemberment and dispersal of body parts. Forensic specialists had to piece together fragments of evidence from multiple locations while ensuring that the chain of custody was maintained and that the evidence would be admissible in court. DNA analysis played a crucial role in confirming the identity of the victim and linking the defendants to the crime scene. The genetic evidence provided definitive proof that the remains found in the Hello Kitty doll were those of Fan Man-Yi and that the defendants had been present at the location where the crimes occurred. Toxicology analysis was also important in understanding the circumstances of Fan Man-Yi's death and the methods used to control and abuse her during her captivity. The presence of various drugs and substances in her remains provided insights into how the perpetrators had maintained control over their victim during the prolonged torture. The forensic investigation also employed psychological profiling techniques to understand the mindset and methodology of the perpetrators. This analysis helped investigators understand the group dynamics that had enabled such extreme cruelty and provided insights that were useful in interrogating the suspects and building the prosecution case. The Hello Kitty murder case had significant implications for Hong Kong's legal system and led to various reforms and changes in how such cases are investigated and prosecuted. The extreme nature of the crimes and the challenges they presented highlighted gaps in existing legal frameworks and procedures. One of the most important legal precedents established by the case concerned the use of testimony from minor witnesses in serious criminal cases. The 14-year-old witness's testimony was crucial to the prosecution, but her age and involvement in the crimes created complex legal and ethical issues about how such testimony should be obtained and presented. The case also influenced procedures for handling extremely disturbing evidence and protecting court personnel and jurors from psychological trauma. Special protocols were developed for presenting graphic evidence while minimizing unnecessary exposure to disturbing material. The investigation of the case led to improvements in forensic capabilities and international cooperation in criminal investigations. Hong Kong police developed new expertise in handling complex crime scenes and analyzing physical evidence that would be valuable in future cases. The case also influenced sentencing guidelines for extreme crimes, with courts recognizing that certain types of sadistic violence warranted the most severe punishments available under Hong Kong law. The life sentences imposed in this case established precedents for how similar crimes would be punished in the future. Legal reforms were also implemented to better protect vulnerable individuals from loan sharking and other forms of criminal exploitation. The case highlighted the need for stronger laws against predatory lending and better support for individuals trapped in cycles of debt and abuse. The Hello Kitty murder case became more than just a criminal proceeding. It became a cultural phenomenon that forced Hong Kong society to confront uncomfortable truths about violence, exploitation, and the treatment of marginalized individuals. The case's impact on popular culture and social discourse was profound and lasting. The case influenced artistic and cultural expressions, including films, books, and other media that explored its themes and implications. However, many of these cultural treatments were controversial because they seemed to sensationalize the violence or exploit the tragedy for commercial purposes. The juxtaposition of the Hello Kitty imagery with extreme violence created a powerful symbol that resonated far beyond Hong Kong. The case became a reference point for discussions about the contrast between surface appearances and hidden realities in modern urban life. The case also influenced discussions about mental health, criminal justice, and social responsibility in Hong Kong. The extreme nature of the crimes forced society to examine how such violence could develop and what could be done to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Educational institutions and social service organizations used the case as a starting point for discussions about violence prevention, victim protection, and the importance of reporting crimes and seeking help when threatened or abused. The case's international notoriety also affected Hong Kong's image and reputation, particularly regarding the territory's ability to maintain law and order and protect vulnerable individuals. The successful prosecution of the case helped to restore confidence in Hong Kong's criminal justice system and demonstrated its commitment to pursuing justice even in the most challenging cases. The Hello Kitty murder case provided numerous important lessons for law enforcement agencies in Hong Kong and internationally. The investigation and prosecution of the case revealed both strengths and weaknesses in existing systems and led to improvements in various aspects of criminal justice practice. The importance of protecting and supporting vulnerable witnesses became clear through the case, particularly regarding the teenage witness whose testimony was crucial to the prosecution. The case led to improved protocols for handling minor witnesses and providing them with appropriate support and protection. The investigation also demonstrated the value of forensic science and technological capabilities in solving complex crimes. The successful use of DNA analysis, crime scene reconstruction, and other forensic techniques provided a model for future investigations of similar cases. The case highlighted the need for better coordination between different police units and agencies when investigating complex crimes that involve multiple types of criminal activity. The loan sharking, kidnapping, torture, and murder aspects of the case required expertise from various specialized units. International cooperation and information sharing were also identified as crucial factors in understanding and preventing similar crimes. The case showed how criminal organizations could exploit gaps in law enforcement coordination and how improved communication could help address these vulnerabilities. The investigation also revealed the importance of community policing and maintaining strong relationships with various communities, including those involved in the entertainment industry and other marginalized groups. Better community relations might have prevented the crime or led to earlier intervention. The Hello Kitty murder case provided mental health professionals and criminologists with a disturbing but valuable case study in extreme criminal behavior and the social conditions that can contribute to such violence. The case offered insights into group dynamics, sadistic behavior, and the vulnerability of marginalized individuals in urban environments. The group dynamics among the three perpetrators demonstrated how ordinary individuals could become capable of extraordinary cruelty when certain psychological and social conditions were present. The mutual reinforcement of violent behavior and the competition among group members to demonstrate their cruelty illustrated dangerous aspects of criminal socialization. The prolonged nature of the torture raised questions about the development of sadistic behavior and the psychological factors that enable some individuals to inflict sustained cruelty on others. The case became a subject of study for researchers interested in understanding extreme antisocial behavior. The vulnerability of Fan Man-yi and the factors that led to her victimization highlighted broader social issues including economic inequality, gender-based violence, and the exploitation of marginalized individuals. Her case became a symbol of the risks faced by women working in Hong Kong's entertainment industry. The involvement of the teenage witness raised additional questions about the impact of witnessing extreme violence on young people and the long-term psychological consequences of such exposure. Her case became important for understanding trauma and developing appropriate treatment approaches. The Hello Kitty murder case can be understood within the broader context of international criminal cases involving extreme violence and torture. Comparison with similar cases in other countries provides insights into the universal and culture-specific aspects of such crimes. The systematic nature of the torture and the group dynamics involved in the case showed similarities to other cases of prolonged abuse and murder that had occurred in different cultural contexts. These similarities suggested that certain patterns of extreme criminal behavior transcend cultural and national boundaries. However, the specific cultural context of Hong Kong and the entertainment industry setting of the crimes also reflected unique local factors that influenced how the crimes developed and were perceived. The case became a lens through which to examine Hong Kong's particular social and economic conditions during a period of transition and uncertainty. The international media attention that the case attracted demonstrated the universal human fascination with extreme criminal cases and the ways in which local crimes can become global phenomena in the modern media environment. The case also influenced international discussions about victim protection, criminal justice procedures, and the treatment of cases involving extreme violence. Legal experts and law enforcement professionals from various countries studied the case and its handling to draw lessons for their own systems. More than 2 decades after the Hello Kitty murder shocked Hong Kong, the case continues to influence criminal justice practice, popular culture, and social discourse. Its legacy extends far beyond the specific legal proceedings to encompass broader questions about violence, justice, and social responsibility. The case remains one of the most studied and referenced criminal cases in Hong Kong's history, serving as a benchmark for extreme criminal behavior and a model for how such cases should be investigated and prosecuted. Legal professionals, law enforcement officers, and forensic specialists continue to study the case for insights that can be applied to current investigations. The cultural impact of the case has been lasting and complex, with the Hello Kitty murder becoming a reference point for discussions about violence and evil in Hong Kong society. The case influenced artistic and cultural expressions while also serving as a cautionary tale about the potential for ordinary people to become capable of extraordinary cruelty. The case's influence on victim protection and support services has been significant, leading to improved resources for individuals trapped in cycles of debt and abuse. Organizations working to protect vulnerable women and provide alternatives to dangerous forms of employment have used the case to highlight the importance of their work. Educational and prevention programs have incorporated lessons from the Hello Kitty murder case to help young people understand the warning signs of dangerous relationships and situations. The case serves as a powerful example of how quickly situations can escalate from financial problems to life-threatening violence. The Hello Kitty murder case stands as one of the most shocking and disturbing criminal cases in Hong Kong's history, representing an extreme example of human cruelty and the vulnerability of marginalized individuals in modern urban society. The torture and murder of Fan Man-yi revealed depths of sadistic behavior that challenged understanding and forced society to confront uncomfortable truths about the capacity for evil that exists within seemingly ordinary people. The case's resolution through the successful prosecution and conviction of the perpetrators demonstrated the effectiveness of Hong Kong's criminal justice system in dealing with even the most challenging and disturbing cases. The life sentences imposed on the defendants ensured that they would be removed from society and would not have the opportunity to commit similar crimes in the future. However, the case also revealed significant social problems and systemic failures that contributed to Fan Man-yi's victimization and death. The exploitation of vulnerable women in the entertainment industry, the prevalence of illegal lending practices, and the social conditions that made some individuals susceptible to criminal involvement all played roles in creating the circumstances that led to tragedy. The lasting impact of the Hello Kitty murder case extends far beyond the specific legal proceedings to encompass broader questions about social responsibility, victim protection, and the prevention of extreme violence. The case serves as a reminder that behind sensational headlines and disturbing details are real human beings whose lives were destroyed by encounters with evil. The technological and investigative innovations that emerged from the case have improved law enforcement capabilities and contributed to the solution of other serious crimes. The forensic techniques and international cooperation models developed during the investigation have been applied to numerous subsequent cases with significant success. The case also provides important lessons about the role of media coverage and public attention in criminal proceedings. While public interest can help ensure that cases receive appropriate resources and attention, it can also create challenges for fair proceedings and appropriate treatment of evidence and witnesses. For the people of Hong Kong, the Hello Kitty murder case became a defining moment that influenced how they understood their city and its potential for both civilization and barbarism. The case forced recognition that extreme evil could exist even in one of the world's most sophisticated and cosmopolitan cities. The memory of Fan Man-yi and the circumstances of her death serve as a continuing reminder of the importance of protecting vulnerable individuals and maintaining vigilance against the exploitation and abuse of those who cannot protect themselves. Her tragedy must not be forgotten, and the lessons learned from her case must continue to guide efforts to prevent similar crimes and protect potential victims. The Hello Kitty murder case ultimately transcends its specific details to become a broader commentary on human nature, social responsibility, and the ongoing struggle between civilization and barbarism that exists in all societies. While the perpetrators have been brought to justice and removed from society, the questions raised by their crimes continue to challenge our understanding of evil and our commitment to protecting the innocent and vulnerable.